Even while I love you, I can say that this is why we don't believe what you teach, because you changed the words of the Bible.
And nobody changes the word of the Bible.
Brother,
read that again.
Brother, watch this.
Okay,
Every
go
time
ahead.
we go there, you got to change the word to add something.
Okay.
So then remember that at one time you were Gentiles in the flesh. It doesn't say it according to custom. It doesn't say according to language. It doesn't say it according to tradition, the way you dress, the way you look, the way you eat, your name. Brother, it says in the flesh.
In the flesh,
and what
okay.
you're going to do is
Keep
you're going to try to avoid that. But that's why we
No,
can't
keep
go
reading. Please keep reading.
Words matter, brother.
Keep reading. Words do matter.
Uncircumcised.
Uncircumcised.
Another way to... So they've been identified Gentiles 3 times already.
Yes.
By those that are called the circumcised, which is done in the flesh by human hands. At that time you were without Christ,
right,
excluded from the citizenship of Israel. Another way to indicate these are not Israelites in any manner.
Okay.
And then it says foreigners. Foreigners of the covenant's promise.
Israelite foreigners.
Without God in the world. But now in Christ. But see, you just added the Bible.
No. You know how I know that? Go to 1 Peter.
Why'd you do
Go
that?
to 1 Peter. Israelite foreigners. We call them Israelite foreigners.
Does Paul know the word Israelite?
Through the scriptures.
Brother, does Paul know the word
Check this
Israelite?
out.
But Paul knows the word Israelite, right?
You got to understand.
I don't believe what you teach because it's wrong.
Because you can't see it.
Shalom. Kol YAHAWASHI QADASH. That wants to the elder apostles of the great millstone who rule well. Peace and blessings to the hopefully elect tabernacle of David. There's more hope for a fool than for this dude Vocab, because he's wise in his own conceit. And this is what Apostle Peter was warning about when it comes to understanding Apostle Paul's epistles to those various churches. Let's go there real quick. Let's go to 2 Peter 3. Start at the 15th verse. And it says, "And account that the long suffering of our Lord is salvation, even as our beloved brother Paul, also according to the wisdom given unto him, have written unto you, as also in all his epistles, speaking in them of these things, in which are some things hard to be understood, which they that are unlearned and unstable rest, as they do also the other scriptures, unto their own destruction." And if the Holy Spirit ain't working with you, these epistles are going to be a stumbling block to you. You either going to distort his words, lean upon your own understanding, and come up with your own narrative or doctrine, or you're going to read it and you're not going to like some things that was said. You're going to think that it contradicts what the Lord prophesied in the Old Testament, and you're going to omit the writings of Apostle Paul. So this is what Apostle Peter was trying to warn. Now, I'm responding to this dialogue between Haman, Glass Joe Malone, and this individual right here. I'm not sure which brother this is. I don't know what camp he's a part of, or if he's just on his own, and I don't know who he's learning from. But as you can see, Vocab rolled up on him and sparked this little debate. They was going into Ephesians, the 2nd chapter, which a lot of Christians, they love to go into that chapter because they believe that Apostle Paul was preaching salvation and reconciliation to the Most High, to the Gentiles, which I don't understand, because if something is to be reconciled, that means that there used to be peace between two parties. But then at some point in time, that peace was taken away. So when at any time did the Most High have peace established with heathen nations, and that it would be prophesied that he would restore that peace with that heathen nation? When did that ever happen, Vocab? Where is that at anywhere in the prophets? I would like to know that. We're talking about reconciliation, the restoration of peace, the restoration of a relationship, a connection, a reconnecting. The Lord was never connected with the heathen. So why would Apostle Paul be addressing actual heathens in this epistle? Especially when you go to the beginning of the epistle and he addresses these people as saints. Let's go to Ephesians 1 real quick. And we always deal with this when dealing with these Christians, man. They can't even get past this understanding. There's a reason why the Apostle Paul, when he greeted the church at the beginning of his epistles, his letters, he would refer to them as saints. He would greet them as saints. Who are the saints of the Most High? Ephesians 1:1, Paul, an apostle of YAHAWASHI Mashiach by the will of the Most High, to the saints which are at Ephesus, and to the faithful in Hamashiach YAHAWASHI, grace be to you, and peace from God our Father, and from the Lord YAHAWASHI Mashiach. All right, so these are saints at Ephesus. So this whole epistle is to those saints that are in the church at Ephesus. There were Israelites there because there was a diaspora, there was a scattering of Jews, Israelites all over Asia Minor and also in other various places. All right, because we got to understand the history. Were we not a scattered people? Yes, we were. We were dispersed. All right, as a result of punishment. We're going to get to that in a second, but we just need to establish that. Who are the saints of the Most High? What does it mean to be a saint? Let's go to the Greek word. The word is hagios, and it means most holy thing, a saint. Now we know damn well a Edomite or a Moabite or an Ammonite or a Hamite is not a holy thing. All right, the Lord does not allow profane things to enter in to his holy things. And Esau for sure is the most unholiest thing that exists. It tells you that in Hebrews 12 that he's a profane individual. And so are his descendants. The descendants are profane. Think about it. With the first time the temple got desecrated and ransacked, who was responsible alongside the Babylonians? That profane man named Esau, Edom, the Edomites. What happened during the abomination of desolation? Who's responsible for that? Who had Israelites sacrificing swine's flesh on the altar? Who had them worshiping Dionysus, Zeus in the temple? Who had prostitutes in the temple? Yeah, that's right, Edomites. So they're far from holy. So we know this is talking about Israelites. Thou art an holy people unto the Lord thy power. He hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself above all people on the face of the earth. All right. And then we can get all the scriptures in the Old Testament. Psalms 148:14, Psalms 50:5. I mean, I don't even have to go there. Y'all already know those scriptures. So, I mean, that in alone can shut down Vocab's argument, but when they went into Ephesians 2, he tried to make it seem as if it says completely opposite. So so Apostle Paul addresses the church of the saints, which are Israelites, But then when he got to the second chapter of his epistle, now he's talking to straight up heathens, actual heathens. But that's the confusion you'll receive learning up under the Christian church, because the Spirit of the Lord is not dealing with them. So let's go to Ephesians 2. Because it's not like because he uses the word stranger and Gentile that it makes anything different. He's still addressing these same people referred to as the saints, which we know are Israelites. Israelites, at some point, they became Gentiles. And they refuse to accept that. They're going to refuse it until the judgment. Because it's a hard pill to swallow. So this is Ephesians 2 verse 11. It says, wherefore remember that ye being in time past Gentiles in the flesh. And he kept harping on the flesh part. What do you think this is referring to? Do you understand the history? I'm sure you do, but you like to play dumb. Or you like to play on other people's ignorance that you believe probably don't know the history behind why they were being called Gentiles in the flesh. All right, it says, who are called uncircumcision. All right, which is synonymous by that which is called the circumcision in the flesh made by hands. What's the history on that? Why were they being referred to as the uncircumcision by those who were of the circumcision? Because there was a point in time when Israelites were already scattered, and by the time the Greeks came into power, they Hellenized the world. And under that Hellenization period, you had a lot of scattered Israelites who became and adopted the Hellenist custom, the Hellenist language, the Greeks. They became Greeks. They were forced into it. Now let's prove that real quick. And this is something that Vocab never goes into, because he knows that's the answer. That history is the answer to this epistle. Was being said right here in this passage. You got to understand the history. So let's go there real quick. And this is from the Good News translation, so you can, read it, plainly and have a better understanding of it. Let's go to First Maccabees 1. And then we're going to jump down. And this is what happened. First Maccabees 1 and 10. It says, the wicked ruler Antiochus Epiphanes, son of King Antiochus III of Syria, was a descendant of one of Alexander's generals. He had the 4 generals, right? Antiochus Epiphanes had been a hostage in Rome before he became king of Syria in the year 137. At that time, there appeared in the land of Israel a group of traitorous Jews who had no regard for the law and who had a bad influence on many of our people. They said, let us come to terms with the Gentiles, for our refusal to associate with them has brought us nothing but trouble. So these were very dishonorable Israelites. They wasn't willing to die for their heritage. It says this proposal appealed to many people, and some of them became so enthusiastic about it that they went to the king and received from him permission to follow Gentile customs. This is how it all started. They built in Jerusalem a stadium like those in Greek cities. They had surgery performed to hide their circumcision, abandoned the holy covenant. This is how they became strangers from the covenant, because they abandoned the true holy covenant, which, through that covenant, we had a promise. They abandoned that and started dealing with the heathen, started associating with Gentiles, and did all sorts of other evil things. This is what happened. And you better believe that peace that the Lord, naturally would have for Israel, he took that peace from him. That's why he allowed this to happen to him. All right. Going back to the curse. If you disobey this agreement that we have, these curses are going to come upon you. All right. And amongst our enemies, it would be no ease. The sole of our foot would have no rest. We will be scattered among the people, and we will be serving wood and stone, basically their idols. We will not be sovereign. And that's what happened. It says, and Salakia, the verse 15, they had surgery performed to hide their circumcision. So what was happening with that? You had Israelites to appease the Greeks. They would actually get their foreskin sewn back on their rods, so it'll still look like they're uncircumcised. Because how relentless and tyrannical Antiochus Epiphanes was, if he caught you, performing that procedure or getting that procedure done upon you to keep the covenant of the Most High, he would have you put to death. So let's go to that part of it. Let's go down to let's go down to verse. I'll read verse 41 down to yeah, I'll read verse 41 and maybe down to verse 50. So it says, Antiochus now issued a decree that all nations in his empire should abandon their own customs and become one people. And this is under the third beast. This is the Greek Empire. All right, everybody was under their dominion at this time. All right, so Israel, we didn't have power during this time. All right, the Lord gave the power to these Greeks, which happen to be Edomites. The Greeks are Edomites. It says, all the Gentiles and even many of the Israelites submitted to this decree. They adopted official pagan religion, offered sacrifice to idols, and no longer observe the Sabbath. Now, mind you, because it said, wherefore remember that ye being in time past Gentiles in the flesh. Now, he said the same thing to the church of Corinth. He told them to remember that you were Gentiles. But what was he referring to? Because Vocab was basically saying it is not referring to their customs or their practices. It's just talking about just in the flesh. Well, he said the same thing here. What is this talking about? It's like in 1 Corinthians 12 and verse 1 and 2, it says, now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I would not have you ignorant. Ye know that ye were Gentiles, carried away unto these dumb idols, even as ye were led. So basically, you were walking as the Gentiles were, carried about unto them dumb idols that have no breath in them. You was carrying on like a damn brute. Don't know what the hell you was doing. You was just in gross darkness, commemorating these idols that had that profit you nothing. But now he's, bringing them to remembrance that's, what they came from. Now they're accepted with the Most High because they believe the gospel, and they came up out of that. They came up out of that darkness into the marvelous light. Okay. So going back, this was the history. This is this is why Apostle Paul said what he said, because he understood the history that our people were in this estate for centuries. Hundreds of years had went by between the Hellenist period, all right, when Antiochus or Antiochus Epiphanes did what he did, and by the time Apostle Paul was on the scene. All right, so let's go back, and it says, I read this part. So verse 44, it says, the king also sent messengers with a decree to Jerusalem and all the towns of Judea, ordering the people to follow customs that were foreign to the country. He ordered them not to offer burnt offerings, grain offerings, or wine offerings in the temple, and commanded them to treat Sabbaths and festivals as ordinary work days. Fell away from our heritage. It says they were even ordered to defile the temple and the holy things in it. They were commanded to build pagan altars, temples, and shrines, and to sacrifice pigs and other unclean animals there. They were forbidden to circumcise their sons and were required to make themselves ritually unclean in every way they could. So they were forbidden to circumcise their sons, so they had to be left uncircumcised. So just imagine growing up, all right, throughout the years, generations later, and because your forefathers were forced in this way of life, after have been, beaten away from their old way of life, which was the righteous way, the law, statutes, commandments, years down the line, even just like today, a lot of brothers that were, born into this society that didn't get circumcised because their parents were, they didn't know. Our parents didn't know that they were Israelites. So they didn't feel it was necessary to get you circumcised. You got certain parents that do it and don't know why they're doing it. They're in a Gentile state of mind, but doing what was contained in the law by nature. For hygiene purposes and things like that. But for the most part, a lot of our people, a lot of the men, they didn't get the operation done because their parents were in ignorance. They were in darkness. So just imagine that in this particular time period. All right. So going on, it says, so they would forget the law which the Lord had given through Moses and would disobey all his commands. The penalty for disobeying the king's decree was death. All right. So let's go from there. Let's go to 2 Maccabees 6. So this is 2 Maccabees 6:1. It's still in the GNT translation. It says, not long after that, the king sent an elderly Athenian to force the Jews to abandon their religion and the customs of their ancestors. He was also to defile their temple by dedicating it to the Olympian god Zeus. The temple on Mount Gerizim was to be officially named Temple of Zeus, the god of hospitality, as the people who lived there had requested. The oppression was harsh and almost intolerable. Gentiles filled the temple with drinking parties and all sorts of immorality. They even had intercourse with prostitutes there. Forbidden objects were brought into the temple. All right, and that's why it says in the law, thou shalt not have any sodomites of the sons of Israel, nor shall there be any whores of the daughters of Israel. That was talking about temple prostitutes, in which you had that happening during this time. Okay, so they were Gentiles, man. It says, and the altar was covered with detestable sacrifice prohibited by our law. It was impossible to observe the Sabbath, to celebrate any of the traditional festivals, couldn't keep no high holy days, or even so much as to admit to being a Jew. So they had to be what? They had to, basically, they had to be a Gentile. They couldn't even confess to being a Jew, an Israelite. So imagine this happens, and then hundreds, for hundreds of years, you were forbidden, and you came up in the Greek way, you're not going to call yourself an Israelite. It says each month when the king's birthday was celebrated, the Jews were compelled by brute force to eat the intestines of sacrificial animals. Then during the festival in honor of the wine god Dionysus, they were required to wear ivy wreaths on their heads and march in procession. On the advice of Ptolemy, the neighboring Greek cities were also instructed to require Jews to eat the sacrifices. They were told to put to death every Jew who refused to adopt the Greek way of life. It was easy to see that hard times were ahead. For example, 2 women were arrested for having their babies circumcised. They were paraded around the city with their babies hung from their breast, and they were thrown down from the city wall. See, that was heinous, man. And they did that to make an example. So just imagine this kind of torment, this kind of brute force, this type of tyranny with going on. So you already know, Jake fell all the way from this, man. All right. So that's why it's important to know this history. It even speaks on this in the book of Daniel. Daniel, the 8th chapter, Daniel, the 11th chapter, it goes into it. And it wouldn't make sense for the Bible to have historical accounts of what happened to us during the Babylonian Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire, and then skip all the way into the Roman Empire. What happened to the Hellenist period? And then all of a sudden, there's no difference between a Jew nor a Greek. How did it get to the Greeks so quick? So obviously, this was talking about scattered Israelites who fell away after all these various captivities, lost their way, they lost the custom, they lost their connection to the Most High, they forgot how to truly worship Him, living amongst the Gentiles, the heathens. So the ones that were preserved and still were part of the circumcision, which it was preserved through the Hasmoneans, a lot of those Israelites, they looked at any other Israelite that wasn't preserved, that wasn't in Judea, keeping the customs, keeping the Sabbath day and getting circumcised. They looked at them as outcasts. They looked at them as Gentiles, uncircumcised. All right. And the Apostle Paul is addressing them and telling them, no, the Lord then broke that middle wall of partition from among us. We're all one and the same in YAHAWASHI. That's what he's talking about here. And then we read the next verse. It says that at that time you were without a Mashiach, right? Because they wasn't there to witness the miracles that the Lord did. These are Israelites in other foreign lands hearing about the gospel of Yahawashi. All right, being aliens from the Commonwealth of Israel, so you don't have citizenship there, and you probably would get rejected if you came down there, right? And strangers from the covenant of promise, having no hope and without the Most High in the world. All right, what happened to us? How do we become strangers? How do we become alienated? Because we were scattered, we were outcasted. Let's go real quick to Leviticus 26. Hit that real quick. And these were all our penalties if we were disobedient to the Most High. Leviticus 26 and Leviticus 26 and 33, and it says, and I will scatter you among the heathen, and will draw out a sword after you, and your land shall be desolate, and your cities waste. Then shall the land enjoy her Sabbaths as long as they lie desolate, and ye be in your enemy's land. Even then shall the land rest and enjoy her Sabbaths. basically without Israel even dwelling there. You're going to be serving your enemies in their lands. That's a scattering. All right. Let's go from there to Leviticus. Actually, no, Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter, and the 27th verse. And it says, "And the Lord shall scatter you among the nations, and ye shall be left few in number among the heathen, whither the Lord shall lead you, and there you shall serve gods, idols, the work of men's hands, wood and stone, which neither see, nor hear, nor eat, nor smell." And that's in the curse, Deuteronomy 28 and 64 as well. This is what happened to us. There was going to be a point in time where the Lord's going to have mercy upon us and recover us. Let's go to Isaiah 56. And I'm going to start at verse 6. It says, "Also the sons of the stranger that join themselves to the Lord to serve him and to love the name of the Lord, to be his servants, everyone that keepeth the Sabbath from polluting it and take a hold of my covenant." All right, so you were estranged from the covenant. Now you taking hold of the covenant again. Even then will I bring to my holy mount and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices shall be accepted upon mine altar. For mine house shall be called an house of prayer for all people. All right, let's real quick. Let's get a precept to show you that this is talking about Judah and Israel, because they would be strangers. They would be scattered. All right, Jeremiah 50. Jeremiah 50 in verse 4 and 5, it says, "In those days and in that time, saith the Lord, the children of Israel shall come, they and the children of Judah together, going and weeping. They shall go and seek the Lord their power. They shall ask the way to Zion with their faces thitherward, saying, Come, let us join ourselves to the Lord in a perpetual covenant that shall not be forgotten. My people have been lost sheep. Their shepherds have caused them to go astray. They have turned them away on the mountains. They have gone from mountain to hill. They have forgotten their resting place all over the place." Okay? But the Lord was going to bring them back, and they were going to rejoin the covenant. All right, take hold of his covenant. It says, "The Lord power which gathereth the outcast of Israel." All right, how did they become outcasted? The Lord casted them out. Let's get Deuteronomy 29 and start around 26. Because we know that the Lord did it first to the northern tribes with the kingdom of Assyria, right? This is Deuteronomy 29. Deuteronomy 29 and 26, it says, "For they went and served other gods and worshipped them, gods whom they knew not, and whom he had not given unto them. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against this land to bring upon it all the curses that are written in this book. And the Lord rooted them out of their land in anger and in wrath." And we know he did that with the northern tribes out of Assyria. It's like out of Samaria into the land of Assyria. They became scattered. You had a good number of them that got scattered into the Assyrian empire, and you had a bulk of Israelites of the northern tribes that left that side of the world and came over here, pursuing the 2nd Ezra 13. All right, it says, "And in great indignation and cast them into another land as it is this day." So they became outcasted. All right, and then we know that Judah got cast out of Jerusalem during the time of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. And real quick, let's go to Zechariah 1, in which we know Zechariah, this was during the Medo-Persian Empire. This was after Assyria and Babylon. This is Zechariah 1 In verse 18 it says, Then lifted I up mine eyes and saw, and behold, 4 horns. All right, what are these 4 horns? What does a horn represent? It represents power and authority. All right. You have 4 dominions that came. Daniel saw the vision of these 4 beasts. All right, these 4 horns, these 4 superpowers. Right. And I said unto the angel that talked with me, What be these? And he answered me, These are the horns which have scattered Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem. All right, which are what? The 4 kingdoms. I mentioned it. You had the Babylonians, then you had the Medo-Persians, and this is a prophecy, by the way. Basically 2 kingdoms were already one of them already came, and the Medo-Persians is what took over the Babylonians, and then there was going to be 2 more, the Greeks and then the Romans. So Israel was going to be completely scattered by the time these 4 captivities under these 4 dominions would take place. It says, And the Lord showed me 4 carpenters. Then said I, What come these to do? And he spake, saying, These are the horns which have scattered Judah, so that no man did lift up his head. But these are come to fray them, to cast out the horns, basically to take away the power and authority of the Gentiles, which lifted up their horn over the land of Judah to scatter it. When these dominions rose, Israel became like a vassal state. It was under the jurisdiction of that particular empire. So they had rule over us. Okay. So back Isaiah 56 and 8, it says, The Lord God which gathereth the outcast of Israel saith, Yet I will gather others to him beside those that are gathered unto him. Now remember, let's go real quick in the New Testament. Let's hear what Caiaphas said. Because also remember, the Lord said, There's other sheep of this fold that I must bring. Right? Going back to this prophecy, he's going to gather the outcasts of Israel, yet he will gather others to him. So let's go real quick. John 11 and 49 says, And one of them named Caiaphas, being the high priest that same year, said unto them, You know nothing at all, nor consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, and that a whole nation perish not. And this spake he not of himself, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that YAHAWASHI should die for that nation, and not for that nation only, but that also he should gather together the children of the Most High that were scattered abroad. Okay, so you had the nation, and then you had the scattering of the nation. He was going to bring them 2 together as one, which confirms what was said by Apostle Paul right here in this same chapter. All right, that we were afar off because we were scattered, but we were made nigh by the blood of Yahawashi, by him dying on that cross. All right, Ephesians 2 and 13. And we were going to be afar off. Let's get Daniel. Because if you scattered away from your land, you're far off. There's Daniel 9 and 7. It says, O Lord, righteousness belongeth unto thee, but unto us confusion of faces, meaning shame of faces, as it is this day, to the men of Judah and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and to all Israel that are near and that are far off, through all the countries, whither thou hast driven them, because of their trespass that they have trespassed against thee. All right, so it talks about those that are near, which were within the borders, and then those that are far off, those that were driven through those various countries, that were dispersed, scattered. All right. the Lord restored that peace. So whether we were afar off in other lands or whether we were in the land, it says, for he is our peace, verse 14, who have made both one and have broken down the middle wall of partition between us, having abolished in his flesh the enmity, even the law of the commandments contained in ordinances, for to make in himself of twain one new man, so making peace, becoming that new creature in YAHAWASHI. You put off that old way, right? And that he might reconcile both unto the Most High in one body by the cross, having slain the enmity thereby, and came to preach peace to you which were afar off and them that were nigh. All right. And I just read that in Daniel, talking about our people, that they're going to have some of our people that were near, and you're going to have those that were far off. They were in the isles, all right, of the heathen. They were scattered everywhere. So by the time the ministry of Apostle Paul going to the Gentiles came, they were far off, which is why he had to send epistles off to them when he couldn't make those long journeys and travels. All right, he was going to various places. All right, so this is, I mean, this is simple to understand, but because these Christians don't have the spirit, they make it complicated. All right, and he thought that he was just gonna persuade this brother right here. This brother knew what he was talking about, and then when he pulled 1 Peter 2, he had you choked up. He asked you that question, so it's now strange that an Israelite could be a stranger, right? And then you went off into Abraham and he asked you a direct question. Well, you're a serpent. You're not going to be direct with it. We became strangers. We're still strangers to this day because we're not in our land. All right. So clearly, this is talking about Israelites. Okay. The Lord died for that nation and also the children of the Most High that were scattered abroad. That's why James said in his epistle, to the 12 tribes scattered abroad. All right. Because you had some of the northern kingdom that was a part of that diaspora too. It wasn't just Judah. All right. So we're all one now. All right. Whether you were Israelite keeping, the customs, or whether, because I mean, the conclusion was we all need grace through faith. We all needed the grace through faith. We're only perfect in YAHAWASHI because the circumcision, they really wasn't circumcised like that. They were uncircumcised because they was not keeping the law perfectly, and the Lord called out their hypocrisy. So they were no different than the Israelite foreigners, who wasn't keeping the customs like that. That's why he didn't put the whole burden of the law upon them, like the circumcision was trying to do, because none of them were able to fully do it. That's why the Lord had to make the new covenant with us. So anyway, I had to do a response to it. I saw the elder QADASH, the head brother from the Baltimore camp, did a lesson, so I went and checked it out, and as usual, here this man come with his usual serpentine tactics. You won't fall for it, man. So anyway, call Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushai, and until the next lesson, Shalom.